Hello, welcome to ProBono, sponsored by Cohoon Legal. I'm your host, Amber Cohoon, an attorney in North Texas. We specialize in areas of business law, real estate, employment law, contracts, estate planning, and probate. New podcasts are available monthly, and you can subscribe on most podcast platforms and find us on social media. Follow us at ProBono Show. Remember, this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered legal advice. This information is catered towards Texas with a focus on Texas law. What we have coming today on the show is all about estate planning. First, we're going to talk about some statistics about people who die without wills. Next, we're going to talk about what you need to do if you have a will and you haven't reviewed it. What are things that you need to look that may be a reason why you should redo your will. Also, why estate planning is necessary for all Texans. And then I'll talk about some personal example of why, as a blended family, it was important for me, my family, to get a will done. We're going to look at a transfer on death deed and a common question that most people have regarding their estate, and I'll list some resources that you can use. First, I want to talk about some statistics with estate planning and why it is so important. So most people procrastinate, and of those, over 70% of Americans die without a will. Only 32% of African Americans have a will at the time of their death, and only 26% of Hispanic Americans have a will. And for those of you with elderly parents, 50% of your parents die without a will. And so it's really important that you have a will, your family has a will, and your parents, so that these wishes that you have for when you pass are followed. I have people contact me because they've done a will maybe 10, 15 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, and they're not sure if they need to redo their will. So these are some things to think about, to decide if you need to redo a will. So it's a good idea to review your will every year or so, but especially if you've had one of these life events happen, you should actually get your will updated. So if you've had a birth or adoption of a new child or grandchild, if a child or grandchild has become an adult now, if there's been a death or change in circumstances for any of your beneficiaries, any of your heirs, the executor of your will, if you have a trust or a trustee, any of the agents, if not just your will, but also if you have like a power of attorney, if any of those people have changed or circumstances with them have changed, a personal representative that you have listed in your will, if any death or huge change of circumstances has happened with any of those people, it's a good time to maybe look at updating your will. As well as if you or your spouse's financial situation or goals have changed dramatically, if you've experienced a marriage, divorce, illness, or disability for you or your spouse or any of your beneficiaries. If you've purchased a home or a large asset that you need to include or figure out how to include in your estate, or make a plan for that asset to be passed to your loved ones. In addition to any large increases or decreases in the value of an asset or investments, if you have any like that, life insurance policies, anything like that. If you or your spouse receives a large inheritance that you have, those are considered separate property, and so those don't automatically pass to a spouse. If there's been any changes in federal or state law covering taxes or your investments, or if you've had a change in career as a new job or promotion, sometimes jobs will have death benefits or other things of that matter that might affect your estate plan or will that you already have in place. Also, if you start a business or if you close a business, if you start not just as a sole proprietor, But if you actually form an LLC or a corporation, those are inheritable. And so you want to actually make a plan for that business within your own estate plan. And also something that you don't ever want to forget is you want to update your passwords, your digital password list, and put that with your estate plan. Also, if you have a lot of assets and or companies that you have investments with, it's always good to make a list of those and put those with your estate plan documents as well, so that your loved ones have it all in one place. Next, we're going to talk about why it's necessary for every Texan to have an estate plan. First, without a will, your state, the state of Texas, has intestate laws, and intestate means that you die without a will. So the intestate laws will decide who inherits your property. Two, without a plan, your children and loved ones will have to deal with making important decisions while they're grieving. Within hours of dying, your loved ones will have to decide about your remains, what funeral home, if any, you should be taken to, or should you be cremated or buried, as well as most funerals occur within a week or less of after a death. 3, proper planning can protect your children and loved ones from creditors and lawsuits. Now, this isn't just done within a will, but usually that involves a trust. But these are things that, depending on your estate, you'd want to understand better by talking with an estate planning attorney. Number 4, proper planning can speed up the time it takes to go through the probate process. So probate is a judicial process that a will have to go through. And in Texas, if you have a will, then the probate process usually takes about 6 months. Without a will, then it can take a year or 2 to complete. And what that does is that's how the transfer of ownership to your beneficiaries occurs. And so without going through that process, your home won't, transfer into their names. Unfortunately, there's many people who have called that say, hey, my grandpa died, we've been living at this land, then my dad just died, and it's never been changed into anyone else's name. It's still my grandpa's name. What do we do now? We want to sell the property. These are things, especially if you have assets that are real estate or large assets, it's so important to make sure that those are handled properly through a will, and then when someone dies, actually going through the probate process, or there's other vehicles that you can or avenues that you can go down, but it's important that you talk with an estate planning or probate attorney. Also, 5, if you have a non-traditional family, you need to create an estate plan to ensure your assets are distributed to the loved ones you choose. This also includes step families. If you die and you have children from another marriage, then in Texas, your assets will not go to your not all of your assets will go to your current spouse unless you have a will that says so. Number 6, estate plans allow for you to give to charity. If you have a charity in mind that you want to give assets to, then you can do so within an estate plan or a will. If you die without a will, there's nothing in the law that allows for that. It will only go to your heirs. Number 7, the sooner the better. No matter what stage of life you're in, it's time to create an estate plan. Don't wait too long, because no one knows when they will pass. So it's not always easy decisions to be made, and people don't like to face it. But once it's done, you can have a great peace of mind in telling your family that they're taken care of. 8, there are so many unknowns about estate planning unless you've gone through it, or unless you've had someone that has passed that you've gone through that process. There's so many things that you don't realize you have to do. And so until you talk with an attorney that can guide you through that process, a lot of times things will be missed. And 9, if you own a business, having an estate plan is important to ensure that your business continues smoothly even after you're gone. Now, I talked about step families, and I am actually a part of a step family. I married my husband, and he has 2 children, and they were 2 and 4 when I met him. And when we married, they were still not much older than that. Um, we have fortunately been married for 20 some years. But while I was in law school, I learned I had a will for myself. We hadn't had any um, children, I think, when I had created it. But I had no idea until going through law school that because I am the stepmom of his two children, that upon his death, without a will for his assets, that they would be split between me and his two children. Well, when they were minors, then that would have meant that they would be put under with their guardian, who would be his ex-wife. Now, that's not always a bad thing, but in this case, my husband and I had worked really hard to get the assets that we had, and we love his children and wanted to make sure they were cared for, but we also wanted to ensure that I would be taken care of so I could take care of the three children that we had together. And that wouldn't have been possible with the intestate laws, how they state how property is distributed between the current spouse and the deceased person's children from a previous marriage, or even if it's not marriage, just any children that are not of that same spouse, they get an automatic portion of your assets. And that can create kind of a mess at times. So for me personally, that was something that I remember rushing home and telling my husband, we need to put together an estate plan for you. And so it's, our stuff is taken care of properly, and have a plan for, he was still paying child support, and that's another thing, that doesn't end with death. That obligation still goes on, and it's a part of the estate. And so we made plans to make sure that obligation could be taken care of after he passed, or if he passed while they were minors, so that it wouldn't put a burden on me having to raise our three children together. So it's something that until then I had no idea about, and it was a very kind of scary place to be. We were still really young, but recognizing that could be a big headache after he passed, and something that I definitely did not want to have to deal with. So anyways, you might be asking yourself, what are the documents that you should have in an estate plan? Now, different attorneys may do different documents, but essentially there's some very basic documents that every estate plan should have. First, it would be a last will and testament, a durable power of attorney, a medical power of attorney, and you can also have the HIPAA authorization in that, an appointment of disposition of remains, declaration of guardianship, and advance directives. So there's other documents that you can include as well, but those are really a lot of the basic documents that your estate plan should include. I'm not going to go into a rundown of all of those, what those mean. We actually have some resources where you can find out more about each one of those documents and why they're important and how they work within your estate plan. A common question that we get is, what happens to my house if I die without a will? Most often, the biggest and largest asset that a person has is actually their home, and they think they don't really need a will because that's all they have. I just have a house and the stuff in it, so why do I need a will? But if you're a Texas resident and you die without a will, and your assets, your home, then your estate will have to go through the intestate probate process. I talked about it a little before. Probate is a court proceeding that your family member or heir will have to hire an attorney to represent them through. And without a will, that probate process can take up to a year or two to complete. And that probate is the court process where the court determines who legally should take control of your property. And that's when, ownership would change after that process is completed or through that process. Some people don't realize, and like I said before, they live at the house, so they're paying the mortgage, so they don't think anything of it. But without going through that process, you don't actually have ownership and proper ownership. And so at some point, if there's real estate or a home or something of a larger asset like that, you will have to go through the process to actually have proper ownership of it. And because most people do have their largest asset is their home, I wanted to highlight something that you can do to ensure that your home is transferred without that probate process. And in Texas, this is also available in other states, but again, this is Texas law, so I want to focus on that. So in Texas, besides getting a last will and testament done for your estate, if you own real estate in Texas, then completing and recording a transfer and death deed will allow for your home to pass outside of probate, and it would speed up the time that your beneficiaries get ownership of that property. A transfer and death deed in Texas allows for an owner of real property or real estate to designate a beneficiary or multiple beneficiaries who will automatically receive the property upon the owner's death, thereby avoiding the necessity of probate. During the owner's lifetime, the beneficiary has no interest in the property, and the owner retains full power to transfer or put liens on, or the word is encumber, the property, or to revoke it, the deed. You can sell it, you can do anything with it. But the transfer and death deed, it must be recorded in the deed records in the property and where the real estate is located. So if you're living in your home is in Tarrant County or Dallas County, then you would file it in that county's property records. It's a specific document. You list your beneficiaries, and if you have a trust, you can list the trust in there. If you have alternative beneficiaries, you can list those as well. So it allows for the passing of real estate outside of probate. And it's a really good tool, especially in Texas. A lot of people, like I said, just have a house. And if this is the house that you're going to be in for a number of years, then it's really important that you get one of those in place. It's fairly inexpensive to do, considering the power that it has, where you wouldn't have to go through probate. Lastly, I would like to talk about some resources that, I know a lot of people don't get a will because it can be costly. Or if it's just a will or a estate plan, they don't really look into it. They don't want to face it. But there are some inexpensive or free resources, so I want to point those out. And we'll have lists for them as well. So a great resource for Texans for free legal advice and forms is actually through the website texaslawhelp.org. It's managed by a 501c3 nonprofit, the Texas Legal Services Center, and it provides guidance, advice, forms in all different areas of law. So not just estate planning, but family law. It might even do criminal. There's just a real estate, contracts, a whole bunch of different areas. It has a whole thing about small claims court, or what's called JP court, just so the peace court in Texas. So it is just an all-around great resource that I would start there. Anytime you have kind of a legal issue, I would start there to see if it has any resources for you. Another great one is offered by my alma mater, University of Texas in Austin. It's a free personal estate planning kit, and you can get that at utexas.planmygift.org /personal-estate-planning-kit. And so we'll have those links again, but that's another great resource to actually look through and get your estate plan started. If you're in North Texas, we will also provide a link for a list of free and low-cost legal links. And for all Texans, if you are looking for legal help, a great resource to start with is actually visiting the State Bar of Texas, and that's at www.texasbar.com. And they can actually, there's some free resources on there. It has a lot of guidance on hiring attorneys, and it can provide for it can help you find legal assistance in your area. Another resource is to find the county bar association. So we have a Tarrant County Bar Association where we're located. There's a Dallas County Bar Association. Most of those have free resources or very cheap and inexpensive resources. You can also look for legal aid in your area and see what resources they have for free or low cost legal help. And that's for all different areas. It depends on what you're seeking. But there's a lot of good, inexpensive resources out there for you. Okay, so that's a lot of legal stuff, and it's a good information. I'm glad we were able to share it with you about estate planning and how important it is for you and your family. Now we're going to put a spotlight on a product we use in our office. I want to talk about a software that we use in our office called Dubsado, Dubsado. I've been using it for a couple years now. We primarily use it in our law office for onboarding, and allows us to automate so many systems and has actually freed up my support staff in so many ways. We've cut so much hours of time because we've created this great system. And it is a business management platform. It has where you can keep clients, contracts. We have our clients sign their fee agreements this way, so it's digital. We have everything set up. You can do canned emails. You can do workflows. It has actually some contracts already preloaded in there for like photographers and designers, event planners, stuff like that. But I would say if you're a small business owner and you're wanting a system that can make the process of taking a client from a lead to a full customer or client, however that looks, Dubsado has so many tools. There is a lot of resources on YouTube, and I think they have resources. There's a Facebook group to kind of help guide you. But it just has been such a game changer for us. It works with Zapier, which we also use, which I maybe promote in another segment because so much of our systems are automated. And without these tools, we would not be able to function as smoothly as we do. So I really recommend you checking Dubsado out. It's DUBSADO.com. Great. Hope it helps you in your business. I want to talk about my garden. So I have lived in the North Texas area since early 2000s. I grew up here. I went away to school at University of Texas at Austin, and then I moved here as an adult and started working. And I used to work for a lawn and garden company many years ago and in college. And I just love flowers. I love flowers. I love smelling flowers. And so every house that I've owned, I've started a garden in it, and it's just gotten bigger and bigger. And so this garden, I've been in my current house. I'm going on my third year, and I had a large garden, and so it's about 2 years old. But then we expanded it, and so the second part, the expansion, is only about 1 year old. So it still has a lot of growth to do. And my ideal garden, I'm not there yet, but my ideal garden would be to more like a English garden where it's just overflowing. There's no even place to walk except for a pathway that I've created through it. And so that's what I hope to get to one of these days. But so, like I said, I'm an avid gardener, and now the weather is warming up. So I'm eager to get into the garden and start pruning and preparing for spring. I have some bulbs that are starting to come up, and that was tulips and hyacinths and daffodils that I planted, and the the fall, which I learned after planning that maybe that wasn't the best time because Texas warms up so quickly. But I learned, and I just left them in there because I didn't want to get down and dig them all up. So we'll see what comes up. But I will say that it is such a learning experience, and no matter how many gardens I've had, I always find new plants, new varieties, new things to do in the garden that keeps it very exciting and just a really special time. So, anyways, I want to, if you are also love gardening or getting into it, I want to remind you that even though it's starting to warm up, I think this week I'm recording it, it's going to be in the 70s and maybe even the 80s. But we will still most likely have at least one more freeze. And usually that happens by like mid-March, early to mid-March. So if you have potted plants or tender sprouts that are sensitive to the temperatures, then you want to make sure to keep them indoors until after mid-March. Like I said, even though we might be getting 80-degree weather in a few days or next week, Texas likes to trick us and make us think that we can get out and do all this gardening and planting when they might be susceptible to freeze in just a few days. And I even saw that we have had a freeze as late as like April 13th, I think, in 1997. And I can tell you with my own experience is the weekend that my husband and I got married in 2004. It was in April, and it was beautiful Friday weather when we were walking around the outside garden where we got married. It was like 80 degrees. The Saturday of the day of my wedding, it cooled down maybe to 70. It was drizzling. And then overnight, that Saturday night, it dropped down to freezing. So by Sunday, it was bitter cold. So you went Friday from like 80s to, I don't know if it quite got down to freezing or not, but it was so cold. So don't be fooled by Texas. If you're new to Texas, which I know there's a lot of people transplanted here, really it's important to learn about Texas weather before you start investing a lot of money in a garden. So anyways, I actually went through my perennials. I have mostly perennials. I very rarely buy annuals. Just cost-wise, it's expensive. And so I buy perennials. And this last October, I went through and I collected seeds. This is the first time I'd ever done that. But I got quite a few seeds, and I started planting them inside. I have these little cups, plastic little cups that I have started planting the seeds in, and I'm going to be growing them under. I have some grow lights, not a lot, just like one or two grow lights that I'm going to have, and start getting some sprouts ready so that when I can move the plants outside in March, I'll have new growth and get it started. Because usually what I've done in the past, I haven't been this prepared. This is the first year I've been as prepared as I am, so I'm kind of excited. Before I would just, go in March and buy plants and just, do them that way. And that's great, and I love it, but it can be really costly especially for what I want to do in my garden. So I decided I was going to do a lot more seeds and take the seeds for the plants that I have just had such success with, like Rose of Sharon. There's a Texas yellow bells, Texoma. I can't remember. It's got a long name, but it does awesome in this heat. I mean, it was thriving in our 100-degree heat. So I want to make sure that I have more of those because I want to fill my garden up with them. So I have the seeds, I have them going, and some new plants that I just started, and I tried to get going the end of last year because I had learned about them. So this year I'm putting them in, are lamb's ear, and they are just the coolest plant. It's soft to the touch, it's green, they grow really well, I have some little sprouts of them that I had started last year, but they're really little, and so I'm hoping they'll get bigger. And then I went out and actually bought one. I was able to find one, so I'll have them spread out in the garden, different areas. And then another thing that I started, I think on Mother's Day last year, was a climbing rose variety called Peggy Martin. Now, this is can also be known as Hurricane Katrina rose, because evidently some Peggy Martin in Louisiana had it growing, and I don't remember all the specifics, but after Hurricane Katrina, it had been underwater, like 15 feet of water for however many days. And then when the water receded, it bloomed and did great. And so it's a very hardy variety. I have never had great success with roses, and I usually only would get the knockout roses, which are really hardy here in Texas. But we had some disease, I think the rosacea or rosetta disease, I can't remember what it's called, and that has wiped out quite a few of my neighbor's roses, and I think it might be on a few of my knockout roses, so I'll have to take those out. But the Peggy Martin has not been affected, and I have it on a trellis, and it was growing like crazy. It has not bloomed yet. It's supposed to bloom in the spring and in the fall, so I'm really excited about that. And that's the first time I'll have like a variety of rose that isn't a knockout rose. Um, I've seen it in a neighbor's house that it was just covered like the whole fence. It was stunning. So I'm really excited about that. Another thing that I'm excited about is I want to do an indoor terrarium of like mosses. And so I've started that with a pincushion moss, and I'm looking at some other varieties which will do well. And then if those grow well, I want to do a fairy garden. So something little, kind of a small pot that I'll put together, kind of a, it'll be really goofy, but sweet. Like they have like all these little, like a house and like a little fairy, all this kind of stuff, but it's so adorable. And so I'll do it kind of as a decor, but I want to use real moss. So in the meantime, I'm trying to grow and get some moss growing for that. So I don't know if I'll be able to do it this year, but it's something that I kind of want to do as like a little decor item that I can move in and out, because if it's real moss, then it won't do well, I think, in the winter time. So I'll have to move it in with my outdoor potted plants that I have to bring in the winter. But anyway, so those are some things that I'm looking forward to in my garden. And so if you like to garden, you can also, check out some links that I have. Another thing, again, if you're new to the area or you're new to gardening, I really highly recommend joining some North Texas gardening groups. I'm on Facebook, and there's quite a few I'm in. I think I'm there, 2 or 3 of them, and they just have such a wealth of information and inspiration for what you want to do. I'm a long-term goal. I saw someone with this little greenhouse, and so that is a long-term goal, but I can't even tell my husband because he'll be through the roof with being like, how much is this going to cost? Because gardening is so much fun, but it can be very costly. So anyways, I try to be frugal, and that's why I'm using a lot of seeds this year. So we'll see. But anyway, so that's just a little tidbit about something that I'm excited about coming for this spring. Thanks for listening, and I hope you learned more about legal topics that can help you in your daily life. Please share with friends and family, and send any questions that you have that you want me to cover in future episodes to podcast@cohoonlegal.com. Next month, we will be discussing employment law. In April, we will be discussing real estate. And in the subsequent months, we'll be going through basically the 6 areas of law that I cover, which are business, real estate, employment law, contracts, estate planning, and probate. And we'll be covering them twice a year, different aspects of each of those topics. In addition, we'll be having some special guests that cover different areas of law from what I practice. So hopefully we'll be able to bring a wealth of legal knowledge to you in your daily life. Thank you, and have a great day.